The moment Tommy Rees stepped up to that podium, the entire energy in the room shifted. Reporters thought they were settling in for another safe, polished press conference, but what they got instead was something nobody expected. Rees didn't just talk about the Browns' offense, he slipped something into his answers that completely changes the way fans should look at the quarterback situation in Cleveland. One small admission, almost tossed out casually, ended up exposing a much bigger story the organization has been keeping surprisingly quiet. For months, people have been whispering about what's really happening behind the scenes, but Rees's comments finally cracked the door open. And once you hear what he revealed, it becomes impossible to look at this season, or the future of the franchise, the same way again. Tommy Rees didn't walk into Cleveland as some untested newcomer hoping to figure things out on the fly. He arrived with the kind of resume most coaches don't build in an entire career, let alone by the age of 32. This is someone who spent years shaping quarterbacks at Notre Dame, guiding offenses that lived in the national spotlight, and then jumped to Alabama, where the standards are so high that anything less than perfection feels like failure. At those programs, the offense wasn't just expected to function, it was expected to dominate. Rees worked with blue-chip talent, operated inside elite systems, and learned what it takes to turn raw potential into consistent production. That's why his words hit so much harder than the average press conference soundbite. He's seen what a finely tuned offense looks like, and he knows how a future franchise quarterback is supposed to be developed. So when he starts describing the Browns' situation, it's coming from someone who understands the difference between chaos and structure, between forced optimism and harsh reality. And the fact that he's now stepping into a Cleveland offense that has been sputtering for months only amplifies the weight behind everything he says. Rees didn't come here to babysit a broken system or make excuses for why things aren't working. He came from places where winning was the expectation, where quarterbacks were polished into NFL-ready leaders, and where every rep had meaning. So when he opens up about what's happening with Shedeur Sanders and the unusual way this quarterback room is being handled, people listen because he's not speaking from theory, he's speaking from experience. And what he hinted at suggests the Browns' quarterback situation is far stranger and far more fragile than anyone realized. Tommy Rees didn't come right out and say Shedeur Sanders isn't getting real practice time, but he didn't have to. The way he phrased his answers told the whole story without him ever saying it directly. When he admitted they've had to get creative to find extra opportunities for Sanders, it was the kind of slip that instantly raised eyebrows. Coaches usually hide these things behind polished lines about development and patience. Rees didn't. He openly acknowledged that the normal structure of practice simply doesn't give Sanders the reps he needs, and that alone reveals more than the Browns probably wanted out in the open. The idea of creative reps might sound harmless, but in NFL language, it's a red flag. It means the quarterback isn't getting meaningful snaps with the players he'd actually be leading on Sundays. It means his preparation is happening on the margins, in bonus sessions after practice, in manufactured drills, in moments carved out because there just aren't enough snaps during the real work to include him. He even called it a unique situation, something he's rarely seen in the league, which is polite coach speak for, "this isn't normal." Then came the part that really stuck with fans. He said both Sanders and Dillon Gabriel were bought in, working hard, and treating every tiny opportunity like it matters. That subtle detail confirmed what the rumors had been saying for weeks. Sanders isn't just missing out on first-team reps, he's missing out on most standard reps altogether. He's functioning off scraps, relying on improvised sessions to stay sharp. And the more Rees talked, the clearer it became that the Browns aren't developing Sanders in the usual way. They're trying to grow him in the shadows, outside the main structure of practice, as if they're juggling two quarterbacks, but only truly preparing one. For a fan base already suspicious about how the team is handling their most intriguing rookie, Rees unintentionally validated every concern. He didn't complain, he didn't point fingers, but he confirmed the one thing nobody inside the organization wanted to say out loud. Shedeur Sanders is being asked to prepare for an NFL future without actually being given the reps that build one. What makes this situation so bizarre is that Cleveland isn't dealing with the usual quarterback hierarchy: starter, backup, third string. They've built something far stranger, something most teams actively avoid because it creates confusion instead of clarity. The Browns aren't developing one rookie quarterback, they're juggling two. And not a veteran plus rookie pairing like most rebuilding teams. No, they've got two first-year quarterbacks trying to grow in the same system during the same season with the same limited practice reps. That alone would raise questions. But when one of those rookies is struggling badly while the other is considered by many scouts to have the higher ceiling, the setup starts to look less like a strategy and more like an identity crisis. Dillon Gabriel is technically the starter, but his performances have been rocky from the jump. Every week, his QBR hangs near the bottom of the league, and the offense sputters along with him. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, who came into the league with far more hype and a reputation for poise under pressure, has barely touched the field outside of those improvised, creative reps Rees mentioned. It's the kind of arrangement that leaves people wondering if the Browns are trying to develop both quarterbacks or somehow managing to develop neither. Reports have already exposed what the team hoped would stay quiet: special post-practice sessions designed specifically to get Sanders extra work because he isn't getting it when it matters. That kind of workaround isn't something teams do when the depth chart is stable. It's something they do when the usual practice structure is failing one of their players. The strange part is that everyone sees it. The fans, the media, and even analysts who've attended practice and watched Sanders look sharp when he finally gets the chance to throw. But instead of addressing the imbalance directly, the Browns keep moving forward like everything is fine. They refuse to adjust the rep distribution, refuse to let Sanders get meaningful time with the starters, and refuse to acknowledge the obvious truth. This is one of the oddest quarterback setups in recent NFL memory. Two rookies, one playing through constant struggles, the other quietly outperforming expectations in the background. And no one inside the building seems willing to say why the more polished prospect is the one watching from the sideline.
Meanwhile, Sanders sits behind him, watching the offense stall week after week without being allowed to touch the same practice reps that could help him grow. What makes this even more puzzling is that Sanders has done everything right. When he spoke about the rep situation during minicamp, he didn't complain or hinted frustration. He approached it with maturity, talking about staying ready, learning from every moment, and focusing on the work, not the excuses. That kind of mindset is rare from any rookie, let alone one dealing with reduced opportunities. Yet even with that professionalism, he's locked out of first-team snaps. And analysts who've been at practice keep saying the same thing. When Sanders does get the ball in his hands, he looks good. Not perfect, not ready to dominate the league tomorrow, but more controlled and polished than you'd expect from a fifth-round rookie. Some even say he looks more comfortable than Gabriel when the two run side-by-side drills. If a team is truly committed to finding the best quarterback for its offense, those reports alone should warrant giving Sanders a fair share of the meaningful reps. Instead, he's limited to scout teamwork and side sessions that barely resemble real preparation. That's what makes this situation so frustrating for fans. It's not that Gabriel is playing, it's that Sanders isn't even being allowed to compete. He's stuck in a development plan that feels more like a holding pattern, one that doesn't match the reality of what's happening on Sundays. And as the offense continues to sputter, the one question nobody in the organization will answer keeps getting louder. If the starter is struggling, the reps are unbalanced, and the other rookie is showing promise, why is Sanders still waiting for a chance he's already earned? The deeper you dig into this quarterback situation, the more it starts to look less like football strategy and more like classic front office ego. Nobody inside the Browns organization will ever come out and admit it, but the draft room plays a much bigger role in these decisions than fans want to believe. When a team spends a third-round pick on a quarterback, like Cleveland did with Dillon Gabriel, that investment carries weight. It becomes a symbol of the front office's evaluation, their confidence, and their long-term plan. And when that same team later grabs another quarterback in the 5th round, people inside the building notice the difference. One is viewed as the chosen project. The other is viewed as the backup plan. Rumors around the league have quietly suggested that part of the hesitation with Shedeur Sanders comes from that draft hierarchy. Even though many analysts had Sanders graded higher than Gabriel, even though some reports claimed he fell in the draft due to questions that now look exaggerated or flat-out unfounded, he still entered the league with the 5th-round label. And teams often treat those labels like destiny. It's not always about talent, it's about pride. Admitting that the later pick might actually be the better quarterback forces everyone involved to re-examine their evaluations, their scouting process, and the decisions they made under pressure. Not every organization is willing to do that in the middle of a season. Then there's Rees himself, newly promoted, young, and stepping into a job where loyalty matters just as much as play design. He's been clear about his respect for Kevin Stefanski, crediting him for bringing him to Cleveland, supporting him through the transition, and giving him room to grow. In a league built on hierarchy, that kind of loyalty creates boundaries. It means Reese isn't going to push too aggressively for a quarterback change unless Stefanski initiates the conversation. And if Stefanski has already aligned himself with Gabriel as the developmental priority, Reese isn't going to break that structure, at least not publicly.
None of this means the Browns are acting maliciously or intentionally holding Sanders back, but it does reflect how NFL politics can shape decisions that fans assume are purely performance-based. When a team invests more in one rookie than another, when a coaching staff feels pressure to validate that investment, and when a new coordinator wants to stay aligned with his head coach, the depth chart can become less about competition and more about protecting reputations. And in Cleveland's case, the quarterback with the higher ceiling might be the one stuck waiting for the organization to move past its own draft day pride. Bernie Kosar tried to offer a dose of wisdom when he weighed in on the Browns' quarterback situation, and coming from a former franchise legend, his words naturally carried weight. He warned about the dangers of rushing a young quarterback into action before the team around him is stable, reminding everyone how easily the NFL can break a player who's forced to carry too much too soon. It was a fair point. History is full of talented rookies who never recovered after being thrown into impossible situations. Kosar's concern came from experience, not fear. He's seen how quickly a promising career can collapse when the support system fails. But here's the part that gets overlooked. Kosar was talking about a completely different scenario than the one Cleveland is in right now. His warning applies when a team has a reliable veteran in place, someone who could hold down the job while the rookie learns quietly in the background. That's not what's happening in Cleveland. The Browns aren't shielding Shedeur Sanders behind a seasoned starter with years of experience. They're shielding him behind another rookie, one who's struggling as much as any young quarterback in the league. The idea of protecting Sanders falls apart when the quarterback taking the reps isn't producing, isn't stabilizing the offense, and isn't giving the team a realistic chance to grow. The risk Kosar was talking about is already happening, just not to Sanders, it's happening to the season itself. Even if Sanders went out there and hit the same bumps Gabriel is hitting right now, at least the Browns would be learning something valuable. They'd be getting real data, real experience, and real development out of the growing pains instead of watching their offense stagnate week after week with no long-term benefit. Kosar's warning is rooted in the idea of saving a promising quarterback from a bad situation, but the Browns don't have the luxury of choosing between stability and chaos. They're already in chaos. And when both quarterbacks are destined to struggle behind a battered line and a disjointed system, it makes more sense to struggle with the one who might actually grow into a franchise cornerstone. That's why Kosar's caution, while respected, doesn't quite fit this scenario. Protecting Sanders from early exposure only works if he's being developed properly behind the scenes. But even Rees admitted that the rep situation is unusual, limited, and far from ideal. If the Browns are truly trying to secure their future, hiding Sanders behind another rookie isn't a safety plan, it's a delay. And with the offense flailing and the season slipping away, delaying the obvious choice is becoming harder and harder to justify. What makes this entire situation even more compelling is the way Shedeur Sanders has handled it. Most rookies in his position would be frustrated, vocal, or visibly impatient, especially after coming into the league with national attention and expectations. But Sanders has shown nothing but composure. Every time he's been asked about the lack of reps, he's answered with a level of maturity that even seasoned veterans struggle to maintain. Instead of complaining, he talks about embracing the challenge, staying ready, and treating every moment as a chance to grow. That mindset alone has earned him respect inside the locker room, even if it hasn't earned him the snaps he deserves.
But where his impact is really being felt is outside the facility. Sanders has already built a connection with the city of Cleveland that most rookies never reach, even after playing entire seasons. He's been everywhere, giving away cars to single mothers, stopping by local schools to encourage students, showing up at youth camps, and taking time to engage with fans who haven't even seen him play a regular season down. Those interactions aren't staged photo ops or forced PR moves. They're genuine moments that show who he is as a person. It's the kind of authenticity that cities remember, and Cleveland, a city that values loyalty and heart, has responded to him in a big way. What's striking is how quickly fans have gravitated toward him. They see the humility, the work ethic, the leadership, and the patience he's showing during a situation that would drive most players up the wall. They see a young quarterback displaying the poise of someone who's been in the league for years. And even though he hasn't touched the field on Sundays, many Browns fans already view him as the most promising quarterback on the roster. It's rare for a player to build that kind of momentum without playing, but Sanders has managed to do it through character alone. And that rising support only amplifies the frustration. The fan base isn't just eager to see what he can do, they're invested in him. They've watched the offense stumble week after week, knowing that the quarterback with the right mindset, the right work ethic, and the right intangibles is standing quietly on the sideline. Sanders has done everything right. He's won over the city, he's impressed the people who've watched him practice, and he's shown he's ready for whatever the NFL throws at him. The only thing he hasn't been given is the opportunity to prove it on the field. When you piece together everything Tommy Rees said and everything he carefully avoided saying, a much bigger picture starts to come into focus. He never criticized the organization outright, never pointed fingers, and never questioned the depth chart. But the details he slipped into his answers expose the underlying truth the Browns haven't wanted to acknowledge publicly. Reese admitted that Sanders isn't getting enough reps. He admitted the situation is unique, which is his polite way of saying it's far from ideal. He admitted they've had to manufacture extra opportunities because the system in place doesn't naturally support developing both quarterbacks. These aren't normal problems, and they aren't the kind of issues a team has when their depth chart is stable and their plan is clear. What Reese really revealed is that the Browns are stuck between two conflicting agendas: the desire to develop the quarterback they invested more draft capital in, and the reality that the other rookie, the one getting scraps of practice time, might actually have the higher ceiling. It's a quiet admission that the team knows Sanders needs more than they're giving him, but isn't sure how to adjust without shaking the internal hierarchy. Reese's loyalty to Stefanski came through subtly, making it clear that he's not the one pulling the strings when it comes to who gets first-team reps. He's working inside the framework he inherited, even if he can see the limitations of it. And underneath all of that is the message he didn't mean to send, but absolutely did. The Browns are almost aware they're mishandling this. They know it's unusual to juggle two rookies. They know one of them isn't being developed properly. They know the current structure isn't giving Sanders what he needs. Reese's comments framed it as something they're trying to navigate, but to fans and analysts listening closely, it sounded more like a confession. That's why his words hit so hard. They weren't dramatic or emotional, but they peeled back the curtain just enough for everyone to see what's really happening. The organization is caught in a cycle of hesitation, loyalty, and draft day pride, and Sanders is the one paying the price for it. Reese didn't expose a scandal, he exposed a truth. The Browns see the potential. They see the promise. They see
the opportunity. They just haven't decided whether they're ready to act on it. And until they do, Sanders remains the most intriguing quarterback in the NFL who still hasn't been given the chance to show what he can do. Tommy Rees didn't intend to shake up the conversation around the Browns' quarterback situation, but that's exactly what his words accomplished. In a few measured answers, he revealed the quiet tension running through the organization, the mismatch between the plan they're sticking to and the reality unfolding on the field. Cleveland is operating as if time is on their side, as if the season is something they can patiently navigate while two rookies grow in perfectly controlled conditions. But anyone watching knows that's not the case. The offense is sputtering, the losses are piling up, and the spark they keep talking about hasn't materialized. Meanwhile, the one player who might actually bring that spark is waiting in the wings, doing everything right, saying everything right, and earning the trust of a fan base that's starving for hope. Sanders has the talent, the temperament, and the support to become the centerpiece of the franchise's future. What he doesn't have is the opportunity, and Reese's comments made it clear that the current setup isn't built to give him one. And that's where this story leaves Browns fans with a question the organization can't avoid forever. How long can they hold back a quarterback who seems ready for more? Every week the offense struggles, that question grows louder. Every time Sanders handles adversity with composure, it becomes harder to overlook. Eventually, the Browns will have to decide whether sticking to their original plan matters more than exploring the potential sitting on their own sideline. Reese may not have meant to spark that debate, but now that it's out in the open, it isn't going away. The Browns can either continue protecting a system that's failing or take a chance on the quarterback who's already won over the city without throwing a single NFL pass. At some point, the team will have to choose between the comfort of their draft decisions and the possibility of a better future. And when that moment comes, fans won't be wondering what Sanders can do, they'll be wondering why it took so long to find out.